Hey, welcome to State of Tel Aviv. We are really fortunate today to speak with Jonathan Conricus, regular guest of ours who is running from interview to interview. We have focused in today's chat on the extraordinary accomplishments to date of the IDF, the Israeli Air Force, and the really strong performance of Israel's air defense systems. Yes, there are some missiles getting through, but Jonathan Conricus is going to explain why, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding out there about why there are direct hits and civilian casualties in Israel, much more so than we've seen in the past. I spoke to Conricus about 6 hours ago. As always, a lot has happened since then. Our kind of rhythm of life these days in Israel is that we basically don't sleep. There are usually big waves of attacks from both Yemen and Iran, late afternoon, early evening. And then we get a bit of a break, and then it really heats up during the night. And, we're all running on no sleep and I guess high anxiety. I'm recording this just around 6 p.m. and there are very recent reports that the Iranian leadership is sending messages through channels indicating that they would very much like to negotiate some kind of, ceasefire, stop the attacks, back off. Nobody really knows what the substance of it is, but will be interesting, of course, to see if and what happens. President Trump would no doubt be delighted if a deal was made. Israel is very determined to remove for all time the threat that a nuclear Iran poses to the survival of this nation. I'm Vivian Berkovich, former Canadian ambassador to Israel, and now getting ready for another raucous night in southern Israel. Stay with us. Monday, June 16th, 2:24 p.m. on the nose in the afternoon in Israel after what can only be described Lieutenant Colonel in Reserves Jonathan Conricus as a tough night in Israel.
Yes, tough for millions who had to rush in and out of bomb shelters, frightening for children and many others, and lethal for, I believe, 10 additional Israelis who were murdered tonight by incoming Iranian ballistic missiles. And it's a reminder for those who needed it. I don't think that anybody needed, but really there's tremendous success for Israel in Iran, military success, taking out lots of targets and tremendous historical achievements against the Revolutionary Guard, against air defenses, against the nuclear program, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. But at the end of the day, the Iranians are still firing bombs with around 400, 500 kilos of high-grade explosives, and they are decimating Israeli buildings and murdering Israeli civilians. And that is a horrible reality. I'd say that despite that being the case, what I see is still strong resilience, and this is absolutely key that Israeli society remains strong and steadfast, because this is not going to be over anytime soon.
No, it's not. And the reality is we have no choice but to remain strong and steadfast. So let me just back up. The first wave, we're starting to see a bit of a pattern. And, just to inject a little black humor for a moment, I started to call it the witching hour. We remember when our children were very newborn babies and they tended to get really kind of difficult at dinner time and then at some point in the middle of the night. And these seem to be the times when the missiles start to pour in, kind of late afternoon, early evening. And then, of course, we get a bit of a respite in the middle of the night. Yesterday, correct me if I'm wrong, the first wave of missiles came from the Houthis in Yemen. And the second wave came from Iran. Possibly also some were launched from within Iraq as well. One of the questions that I have, and many have, and you are much more expert in this than I am, certainly, what's going on with the air defense systems? Which air defense systems are being relied upon primarily? Because I'm quite certain it's not Iron Dome. given the long-range nature of these missiles. And a lot of people are thinking, hey, what happened to Iron Dome? How come it's not working all of a sudden? So please explain that.
Yeah.
And the fact that Israel, to this point, is defending itself alone. There is no involvement as yet that we know.
Not true. And I'll
Then
correct
fix
that.
that, because I was reading information last night in the middle of the night. So go to it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's address this whole issue of air defense. First and foremost, let's say that the Iranians, like many other of Israel's enemies, made strategic decisions, I'd say around the end of Yom Kippur, but really the change happened with the first Gulf War, when our enemies understood that it's virtually impossible to defeat Israel on the battlefield. Our enemies tried many times, but the Syrians, the Egyptians, the Jordanians, the Iraqis, the Lebanese failed time and time again, and they paid a heavy price. And they've always struggled with Israeli Air Force dominance. Israeli Air Force, well, maybe not in 48 because we barely had an Air Force, but since then, Israel has invested strategically in that strategic arm, the Air Force, and it has been tremendous. It's, I would say, pound for pound, no doubt the best in the world. There are others that are bigger, but our pilots and our tech, I think, amazing, rewriting history. Now, what our enemies have done to counter that is to build missiles and to rely on standoff fire, which is basically firing missiles from far away and delivering a big payload of explosives towards Israel. The benefit of doing that, what the enemies have found out, is that they can compete with Israel and deter Israel mostly by killing Israeli civilians and by wanton and just random strikes in Israel that are more statistic and less surgical, which is a stark difference to what Israel is doing with strikes that are based on pilots guiding their missiles to a target or guiding them with GPS and making sure that they hit the intended target and not 2 kilometers southwest, north, or east. So the Iranians have taken this, I think, to the extreme. They have, before the war, they had by far the biggest ballistic missile array, thousands. The last Israeli estimate speaks about almost 8,000 ballistic missiles of various caliber and range. And that is what Israel is facing now. And in opposition to that, what Israel developed over the years, the offensive capabilities of Israel has been the Air Force, which is capable of flying to Yemen, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Gaza, Judea, and Samaria, and it could fly to other places if needed, and let's hope that it won't be needed. But it could fly, it's extremely versatile. And in defense, what Israel has built is, I would say, state-of-the-art, best in the world air defenses that are based on 3 tiers. The lower tier that you refer to is the Iron Dome. It is designed to deal with low-level, smaller payload, rockets, missiles, drones, and slow-flying aircraft that are relatively low in terms of altitude and have a certain trajectory to them. Iron Dome is what people know most of the time, and I've corrected, news reporters with years of experience, and they speak about Iron Dome and ballistic missiles. That's, of course, a mistake. Iron Dome has very little to contribute when it faces a ton, a flying object the size of a ton, that weighs a ton, incoming, and the size of a bus. That's what Israel is dealing with now. It's objects that are almost as big as a school bus, weighing about a ton, with around 400, 500 kilograms of weapons-grade explosives. So the lower level is Iron Dome. The second level is David Sling, which is just a tier above. And then the third level, which is what we're using the most now, is the Arrow interceptors 2 and 3. And all of these systems, they operate together. They're under centralized command. They overlap. They communicate with each other. They're under one commanding authority, and that is the IDF Air Defense Array, which monitors all of this. And they're linked, different radar systems, and they have a joint operating picture. And when the incoming threats appear on Israeli radars, and it happens very quickly, basically the moment that they're fired, Israeli radars detect them and start preparing and calculating how to do it. What's complex here, or very challenging, is that we're talking about missiles that exit the atmosphere, go up very, very high, tens of thousands of feet, and then re-enter the atmosphere as they are aiming towards the target. We're talking about tremendous speed. We're talking about very big objects and guiding systems that they have, these missiles, that make them much more accurate than anything else that Israel has been facing so far. I'd say that the IDF hasn't released statistics. It seems that we are not talking about the same interception rate as Israelis became accustomed to, 92, 93% successful interceptions out of those attempted, which is what the Iron Dome delivers. That is not where we are with the big ballistic missiles and the interception rate of the Arrow system. And yes, it looks as if the Iranians have found a way to temporarily overwhelm and saturate air defenses in certain areas by firing 30, 40 missiles at a certain geographical area and then forcing the Israeli systems to kind of prioritize, and eventually a small percentage of the missiles they kind of slip through. It's a small percentage, but each missile carries tremendous payload and it creates a lot of damage. Now, what Israel is doing in order to defend itself is using this tremendous array, of course, and then there's the whole alarm system calling on Israelis, urging them to get close to shelters and then actually go in shelters and telling them when it's safe to exit. By the way, no other country in the world has this. No other country has invested so much money, time, talent, and resources in providing this level of security for its citizens. I think that is, we take it for granted. No other country has it. Maybe no other country faces the challenges and the threats that we do, but Israel has it because we've invested in it, because we have prioritized it, and we prioritize life. Many times I hear stupid commentators and people on X who say, well, if Gaza had the Iron Dome or if the Lebanese had Iron Dome, then they wouldn't suffer. Well, they don't need an Iron Dome because we don't fire at their civilians. We need an Iron Dome because an air defense is because our enemies aim at our civilians. Now, what Israel is doing, and with this I will wrap the answer, active defenses with missiles, radars, and of course hard concrete defenses like Israelis go to their bomb shelters. But what's really important, and this is what's going to determine the future, is hunting the launchers. And Israel is hunting and destroying Iranian launchers. Every day that goes by, Israel takes out tens of active launchers, and it narrows the bottleneck for the Iranian regime with the amount of missiles that they can get off in every time. And then the direct derivative of this is the fewer launchers that they have means that the Iranians will be challenged to saturate Israeli air defense systems, and Israeli air defense systems will be able to shoot them out of the sky even if more will be shot, because the Iranians won't be able to bring so many missiles, fire them out into the air, and the challenge will be less for Israelis. And you can see, if you put it on a graph, you can see that the first salvos were more than 200 missiles, and then it's gone down from 200 to 150, and then 150 and 30. And yes, the Iranians are still capable of penetrating, but I think they will see less and less success because Israel has achieved aerial dominance over Iran, all of Iran. And whenever a launcher gets ready, opens the hatches, heats the fuel, and does the procedures that are needed in order to fire up and prepare a ballistic missile for being dispatched, Israel sees that. We have drones that are flying over Iranian territory, and the moment that happens, then the Israeli Air Force retaliates. And Israel has already taken out dozens of launchers, maybe even hundreds of launchers, and I think this will continue. Of course, it's an urgent matter because this is what influences the lives of Israelis, but progress is being made, and if you put it on a chart, every day, less and less Iranian missiles. Soon, I think we will come to a situation where they won't have any ability to fire missiles, and then will be an interesting decision time for the Iranians.
To our recent new subscribers, thank you so much for joining us, and huge gratitude for your support. Deeply, deeply appreciated. To those of you listening and reading and enjoying our content on a regular basis, we can see how dedicated you are and ask again, and we're going to keep asking, to please consider supporting our work with a paid subscription. We are independent. We have no source of income or resources in order to generate this work that you value and we really think is important to share with as many people as possible. So please, please subscribe today. You will have our undying, boundless, eternal gratitude. Sincerely. Okay, back to the program. One of the big lessons that Israel learned, of course, April 13, 14, 2024, when Iran launched hundreds of sort of drones and some missiles at Israel in that first attack. And Israel was concerned that its air defense systems would be overwhelmed, and they certainly would have been overwhelmed had the Americans, French, UK, and I believe Saudi and Emirati air forces as well, and Jordan also cooperated. Had all of these air forces not come together on that night to shoot down, intercept something like 95% of the missiles and drones that were targeted at Israel. It was an extraordinary evening. This, of course, I want to get back to what we were talking about. And you mentioned at the beginning that, yes, we do have some assistance from others. And I'm going to assume, but give you the floor in just a moment, that when you refer to others, you refer to the United States. I know that the United States has the THAAD air defense system, it's the diamond of air defense systems. They have deployed it in defense of Israel previously in this conflict. And so I'd like you to address a few things together. One is, do you have knowledge as to whether or not THAAD and or American air defense were deployed last night? Secondly, I was reading in the middle of the night, as I'm sure you were and many others on our various WhatsApp groups, about the Israeli Air Force neutralizing missiles as they were, just as you explained, in the launch pads. So they're able to take them out before they're even launching, and there was a lot of that going on. But also last night, there was, I believe, a 4.2 earthquake detected in an area of Iran, if I'm not mistaken, in the vicinity of the Fordo nuclear site, which is deep underground and is known to be the main nuclear centrifuge, what would you call it, operational base in Iran. That there was at some point in the early hours of the morning a 4.2 earthquake detected, and there were as well aftershocks. And based on what I have read and heard, an underground explosion of nuclear material could cause such an earthquake and aftershocks. So, Dish, tell us what you know.
Yeah, I'll try to do it short and concise. Air defenses, unequivocally, yes. The U.S. is actively participating with THAAD and Aegis missiles, air defenses. I don't know specifically about last night, but I do know 100% that U.S. air defenses are active and helping. And beyond that, the French have said that they will assist Israel in air defenses. The Brits have advanced capabilities to Cyprus. The Jordanians are assisting in taking down drones above Jordanian airspace. Of course, they're not communicating that they're helping Israel. They are just defending their own airspace, and that's fine by me, but it is excellent. And that coordination is very, very important. And Israel is not fighting alone. And that's
Yeah, but please mention Syria as well.
yeah, and the Syrians, quite remarkably, have said, basically, in other words, that Israel can use Syrian airspace in order to defend itself. And I put that in the golden box of amazing statements that I never thought I would hear. The first statement was when Hezbollah basically said, "Don't call us, Iran, we're busy," when the war started and Israel attacked Iran. Hezbollah said, it's not a good time for us, so we're not going to get involved, which is just blows your mind. That's the whole purpose of Hezbollah. That is why the Iranians built and armed and equipped Hezbollah just for this day. And they're not there. They're bailing on them. And that is a strategic disappointment of historical magnitude for the Islamic regime. And another thing, this Syrian statement of, okay, yes, you can use our airspace. Of course, this wouldn't have happened without U.S. involvement, U.S. diplomacy, leadership of President Trump, and telling the Syrians that, well, this is the way to go, that you do good things will follow. And I'm sure that the Syrian decision was made exactly based on that understanding. And again, and I've said this before on your podcast, credit to the new Syrian leadership for having lots of strategic wisdom and excellent strategic communications. I'm surprised every time. I suppose I will stop getting surprised sometimes because they keep on saying the right things and doing smart things for themselves. Definitely to monitor. Israel isn't alone. Israel is fighting and getting active defense. I don't have anything new to say about the Saudis, but I'm looking at what's going on and what they're saying, and I'm sure we'll see interesting things about the Saudis as well. Regarding offensive operations, we could speak hours, but I don't have hours to speak. But I'd say this with regards to Iran. Israel continues to peel away layers and components of the Iranian nuclear weapons program. The crown jewel is, and the most important asset and the most hardest target is the enrichment facility at Fordo, near the holy city of Qom in central northern Iran. That is the most important asset. Without it, the Iranians will really struggle to have an active nuclear military weapons program. And I think everybody understands that until that site is taken out, then Israel won't be done with significantly degrading the Iranian nuclear weapons program. So that's what's happening. We don't have confirmed information yet. I believe that we'll have more information today, maybe tomorrow, what exactly happened, what the state of play is at that facility, whether it was struck by Israel, whether something else happened. Common sense would indicate that, yes, indeed, it has been struck and that there is damage, but I think it's premature to say. It is very deep underground, around 60, 70 meters underground, heavily fortified. Impossible to know what's going on unless you have direct access to it. And currently, we do not, and Israel has not shared yet what exactly is going on, and the Iranians have not admitted what's going on. So we'll have to be patient. But this is the grand prize. This is where everybody is looking at. And other than that, Israel is just chipping away at everything else. Isfahan, Natanz, Tibriz, many other locations, Bushehr, in many other locations, Arak, we've started to peel away. All of these locations are important components. By the way, for those watching and you want to see it visually, there's a great map prepared by FDD nuclear weapons experts. You can find it on fdd.org. Just look FDD maps Iran nuclear. Tremendous visuals, which will give you a lot of insight.
I just want to make that, of course, you are a senior fellow with the FDD, which is doing extraordinary work. And I absolutely will put that map up. Thank you for that. I know, do you have 5 more minutes for us? I know you're very much in demand. 2 minutes. Russia has apparently pulled out. There have been some conversations. My goodness, would I have loved to have been a fly on the wall between President Putin and Prime Minister Netanyahu, as well as President Putin and President Trump. And Russia has pulled out all personnel and basically said to the Ayatollah, like, stand down. Trump has said, make a deal. And we're not seeing any movement in that direction. I got to ask you to predict, what do you think is going to happen? How do you think this is going to go down the next day or two? This is, I hate to say it, this is money time. And the people of Iran,
this is money time.
If you're watching, we're with you. We are doing everything we can to rid the good people of Iran of this dictatorial Islamofascist regime. Not that regime change is the goal. The goal is to remove the military and nuclear threat to Israel.
It's not the outspoken official and first goal, but I believe that it is a goal. Israel hasn't said it.
If it is a collateral consequence, we're okay with that.
No, I think Israel will do more than just have it as a collateral consequence. I think as time will go by, Israel will push and shove in that direction. But I'll say about the Russians, it's always dangerous to make predictions, especially when you're recorded. But I struggle to see the Russians venturing in the Middle Eastern conflict, especially when their boy is losing. If their boy would have been, doing well and holding his own and just needed a little support in the corner, that's a different situation. The Iranians are getting hammered. Militarily, strategically, they are suffering. And you never throw, well, they don't have good money, the Russians, but you never throw good money after a bad concept. And I don't think that they would gain very much from supporting the Iranians. Losing battle, the Russians are busy elsewhere. They have bigger fish to fry closer to home. They're not doing so great either in their home front. And therefore, I think that the collective consideration here is it's strategically wise to stay out and consolidate and be conservative. That's my guess of what the Russians will do. But it is, I think, many Russian experts, and I am not a Russian expert, have been proven wrong when trying to predict what Russia will do. Lots of Russia experts didn't anticipate the aggression into Ukraine and many other things. So who knows? But strategic wisdom, as far as I understand it, would indicate that this wouldn't be a smart thing for the Russians to do.
Jonathan, we have spent the last number of years looking at the capabilities of Hezbollah, and we were, I think it's fair to say, quite terrified of what we believe to be their capabilities. We have been, when I say we, I mean in Israel, looking at the capabilities that we believed to prevail in Iran. And I think that what we're encountering now is a very different reality than what we may have been fearing all those years, because things are progressing at an insane pace. And we have to remember that on Friday, the operation focused on taking out or neutralizing what remains of Iranian air defenses, these extraordinarily brilliant pinpoint assassinations of key personnel, key buildings, Ministry of the Interior, the secret police, Ministry of Justice, the key institutional architecture and individuals of the Islamic Republic of Iran have been absolutely decimated over the last few days, which, of course, as a former military man, throws chaos into the command structure and the organizational structure. So there's been all of this stuff going on at an incredible pace. Now we basically don't want to sound cocky, but can say we own the skies and we are just proceeding to eradicate the Iranian air defense capability. We're 4 days in. I'm kind of hoping, and I'm out of the prediction business just like you, but I'm feeling the 6-day paradigm coming back.
Yeah, let's just hope. And with this, I will have to close that unlike with the 6-day paradigm, Israel will have the strategic vision and leadership to consolidate military brilliance into long-term political and diplomatic achievements. That is what I think Israel should be focusing at.
Thank you so much, as always, Jonathan. Have a safe day.
Shalom. Thank you, Vivian.
Bonjour.
We love hearing from you, so please comment on our website, stateoftelaviv.com, or send us a note to hello@stateoftelaviv.com. On behalf of the State of Tel Aviv core team, Jan Zabo, our creative, graphic, visual, and marketing man, Amir White, producer and editor extraordinaire, sound guy, who is also impressively patient with me and my boomer tech deficiencies, and our social media manager who pitches in on everything, Maya Naftalin. Thanks to the team. Thanks to you for being here. We'll be back soon.